John, what kind of commander-in-chief is President Biden that at a time when American forces are under fire in the Middle East, he can go days without knowing that his defense secretary is in a hospital bed?
Peter, there's a lot to your question, so I want you to bear with me for just a second.
Ain't nothing changed, nothing new here to see. This ain't nothing but some political maneuvering.
America!
Welcome to the eulogy, eat it up. It's called political buffoonery.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome to This Week in DUMBmocracy, where we showcase some of the dumbest newsmakers of the week. For about a week or so, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, depending upon the story that you believe, the White House lost our Secretary of Defense. No, that's not a joke. No, that's not an exaggeration. It's actually a fair assessment of what occurred in the past week. The White House did not know where Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin was. It turns out that he was in the hospital dealing with complications of treatment for prostate cancer. Now, obviously, I'm going to give a disclaimer here. Cancer is not a laughing matter. We don't wish ill on anyone, let alone any of our leaders, and we certainly hope that Secretary Austin is feeling well. He's feeling better. And listen, cancer sucks. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I hope he gets the treatment he needs. I hope he makes a full and complete recovery. And I hope that he beats cancer.
Fuck cancer.
That all being said, what the hell is going on in the White House? We're going to go through the timeline of this debacle. Not my words, that's Politico's words. We're going to see what the White House narrative was. And we're going to watch a real tap dance routine from the White House bureaucrats dealing with the press. But before we get to all of that, please subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any other shows. And if you like what you see in here in this or any of the other videos on this here channel, smash that thumbs up button, like, comment, share the show with your friends, all that good stuff, because all of that feeds that YouTube algorithm.
Just feed it.
Thank you so much to everybody who do what they can to help grow the show. I really appreciate it. And to all you newbies out there that are finding this for the first time, please consider subscribing. I hope I earn your subscription with this video. Now, if you or I were to show up late to work and not have an explanation for it, we might get a reprimand. If we were to not show up at all for a day with no explanation, no phone call, we might get fired. It might be a serious offense. It might be taken very seriously by our boss. But if we're gone for days with no explanation, and there are critical issues to be dealt with at your job, like, I don't know, a war or a conflict or something like that, military activity, I think there would be questions. But that's not what happened here. We just didn't know where Lloyd Austin was. It turns out he was dealing with cancer. And again, we are very sorry to hear that. All of us, I'm sure, universally, doesn't matter what party we're a part of, we're all human beings. Cancer freaking sucks. We get that. But that doesn't excuse the breakdown in communication between the Pentagon and the White House. So what the hell happened here? Let's get into the story. We see that in early December, Secretary Austin was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and on the 22nd, he went to Walter Reed National Military Hospital to get a prostatectomy, which is the removal of the prostate when they have cancers, to treat and to cure the cancer. The Pentagon doesn't inform the White House or the Deputy Defense Secretary that Austin underwent the procedure, but certain operational authorities are transferred to the Deputy Secretary. Now, is that common? Is that uncommon? I don't know. That's certainly a question to ask John Kirby, who is the deputy in charge of public affairs. You'll see a video of that in just a moment. The next day, Austin returns home from the procedure, and then we have the holidays. On January 1st, New Year's Day, the Secretary of State meets with Austin, and President Biden convenes a teleconference with Austin, Jake Sullivan, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Chair Brown, and the Director of National Intelligence to discuss developments in the Middle East. Again, there are things brewing with the Houthis, and there's some military action that's going to be coming later on in the timeline. We move forward into January 2nd. Austin is transferred to intensive care at Walter Reed for complications in his digestive system. But his top staffers and press officials, including DoD spokesman Major General Ryder, Pentagon Press Secretary Chris Meagher and DoD Chief of Staff Kelly Magsamen learned that Austin's in the hospital, but nobody else is informed about this. Meanwhile, Deputy Secretary Hicks, who's vacationing, is informed that she'll be assuming some of Austin's duties, but she does not know that he's in the hospital. This is crazy to me. Move on to the next day, January 3rd, a principals committee meeting on Haiti is held, and only the deputies appear. Austin is not there for this. On Thursday, Magsamen, who is ill, informs Deputy Secretary Hicks and Jake Sullivan that Austin's in the hospital. 2 days pass within the Pentagon. We're not even talking about the White House yet. The Pentagon officials are finding out 2 days after he's been hospitalized that Austin's in the hospital. That is when Jake Sullivan briefs the White House and Joe Biden that Secretary Austin's in the hospital. He doesn't know until 2 days after, on Thursday in the afternoon. They begin drafting a public statement, and Hicks plans to return to Washington, but opts to remain after learning Austin will fully resume his duties the next day. But on Friday the 5th in that afternoon, Magsamen notifies the secretaries of military departments and principal assistants of Austin's hospitalization. The word is getting out now. Shortly thereafter, after 5 p.m., or a little before 5 p.m., I think it says here, the Pentagon clarifies and notifies Congress of Austin's hospitalization. So Biden didn't know until 2 days later. The Congress didn't know until 3 days later. And then a public statement is released disclosing that Secretary Austin had been admitted to Walter Reed and was expected to resume his full duties on Friday that day. Saturday the 6th comes around. Austin released a statement with his apology that he could have done a better job ensuring the public was appropriately informed. But while he's making this apology, nobody knows why Austin is in the hospital. It only comes out later, this week, that people were informed that Secretary Lloyd Austin had prostate cancer. The lack of communication here is completely ludicrous at this high level of government. So let's jump forward to today, where the assistant to Secretary Austin for Public Affairs, John Kirby, has to face the press and explain what the hell is going on in our government.
On the news of the day, did President Biden learn of the Defense Secretary's cancer diagnosis?
He was informed today.
But today?
Did you guys catch that? It was only today, as I'm filming this, on Tuesday night, that the president was informed that the Secretary of Defense has prostate cancer. He knew back before Christmas, but only informed the White House this week that he has cancer. I think that's kind of a detail that the White House should have known about. They could have planned for contingencies. They could have planned to deal with the announcement. They could have planned how to deal with military conflicts overseas without Secretary Austin being present in the room. That's why we have all these redundancies within our defense system, within our government. It doesn't all rely on Secretary Austin, but why hide it from the White House? This doesn't make sense. Make it make sense, John Kirby.
Any details on what his reaction was?
He was informed by the Chief of Staff earlier this morning, and I'm not going to go into more detail than that.
Oh, hell no.
But you got to go into more details than that, John. If you don't, it's going to seem like there's something to cover up. And there's nothing to cover up, right? I mean, the Secretary of Defense is gone for days. Nobody knows where he is. Nobody knows why he's hospitalized until today, even though he knew for maybe a month, a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, that he had cancer. Why be secretive about this? Why not get into this? I don't get it.
So the president has known for, I guess, 5 days now that Secretary Austin was in the hospital, but he wasn't informed why?
He was not informed until last Friday that Secretary Austin was in the hospital. He was not informed until this morning that the root cause of that hospitalization was prostate cancer.
I'm at a loss of words. I can't believe this. How does this happen?
What the hell kind of unit you're running here?
Is that because the White House knew and didn't inform the president, or because Secretary Austin chose not to share that with the president?
Nobody at the White House knew that Secretary Austin had prostate cancer until this morning, and the president was informed immediately after we were.
Who is in charge here?
Last week, we learned that Jake Sullivan, I believe, found out about the fact that Secretary Austin was hospitalized on Thursday morning. So just want to clarify, are you saying the president found out a day later than the NSC did?
No, Jake was informed, our National Security Advisor was informed that Secretary Austin was in the hospital and had been for some time. He found out late Thursday afternoon, and he and the Chief of Staff, Mr. Zients, informed the president later that evening, early that evening, not long after they learned. They informed the president directly, Thursday evening.
We learned also today that Secretary Austin, when he went into the hospital for the first time on December 22nd, he knew he was going to be under general anesthesia, he knew he was going to be spending the night, and transferred authority to his deputy secretary. Was the White House informed then that the authority was going to be transferred?
No.
What do you mean, no? Why isn't the White House being kept abreast of what's going on at the Pentagon when the head of our defense, the Secretary of Defense, is not around? Shouldn't the president know that certain duties and responsibilities are being delegated to a deputy? This is blowing my mind.
Is that what's supposed to happen?
There are the delegations of authority can happen. I wouldn't say on a regular basis, but it's not uncommon for the Secretary of Defense to delegate authority to the deputy, sometimes for very short periods of time. But I think one of the things that we're all going to want to learn from this is the notification process for that delegation of authority.
Oh, you think, John? How is this not already an established policy and protocol? Like I said earlier, when we're going to be out of work, we report to our bosses, hey, I'm going to be out this day. I'm going to give as much notice as we can. If it's an emergency, you reach out and you explain the emergency. Why isn't this standard policy in the White House? I don't get it. Karine, maybe you can make it make sense.
Fat chance of that.
Finally, who does the president hold responsible for this lapse? Secretary Austin, his aides, the chairman of Joint Chiefs, who clearly knew about this the day after the secretary was hospitalized?
I will say this. I mean, Secretary Austin put out a statement, and he took full responsibility for this. So I would refer you back to the statement. And Secretary Austin was very clear, and we appreciate that he has taken responsibility for this. But I also want to say that we certainly hope that he fully recovers and also gets back to the Pentagon. So I'll leave it there. But his statement was very clear the other day.
But you didn't answer the question. Is he going to be held responsible for this? Again, if this was you or I and we were doing this with our employer, there would be repercussions. There may be a write-up. There may be loss of pay. There may be a termination. Why didn't you answer that question? You know what? I think we need somebody else from the press to step up and deal with this. And that someone is Peter Doocy. Like what you see so far? Go ahead and smash that thumbs up button. Also, leave us a comment and tell us what you're thinking. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another show.
John, what kind of commander-in-chief is President Biden that at a time when American forces are under fire in the Middle East, he can go days without knowing that his defense secretary is in a hospital bed?
Finally, somebody asks the question. How do they not know this? What kind of operation are you running that you don't know what the people that you appointed are doing? There isn't a regular check-in, especially when there's military operations that are actively going on overseas?
Ladies and gentlemen, a tap dance.
First of all, at no time was the ability for the United States military to defend our national security interest compromised. At no time was the commander-in-chief, not always in command and control of our military forces around the world. And over the course of those days, we did take military action, action that he approved.
So he was in control of our military, but not in control of his secretary. That doesn't sound too good, John. I hope you got something more here.
Taking out a senior militia commander in Iraq with what we call a dynamic strike, a strike that he had approved many days before, for which the theater commander had full permission to execute. We did shoot down drones and missiles in the Red Sea, our ships at sea, because he made sure they had the existing authorities and the capabilities and the training to do that. So he has been on top of these issues all the way throughout. Now look, where your question kind of gets to is, and I've seen some of the sniping out there.
And rightly so. I think it's a little more than sniping. It's calls for accountability, which thus far nobody has taken. John, come on. Let's get to it here.
You know, how effective can the process be if the secretary can be gone and we don't know about it? I think what you need to understand, and what I hope people will understand, is that the national security decision-making process does not require, in fact, should not require, cabinet-level officials being the sole people in the room making decisions on any given day. You staff these things from the middle up, and then the cabinet officials, whether it's Secretary Blinken or Secretary Austin, come together as appropriate to make the key decisions, which happen.
But you're not answering the question, John. What does it say about a White House that doesn't know where their Secretary of Defense is? Yes, you have all these redundancies. Yes, the national security decision-making apparatus is more than just one person. We get all that. But you're sidestepping the accountability point that Peter Doocy's asking about. Where's the accountability from the White House for this? Where's the accountability from the Pentagon on this? Stop doing a dance. Answer the damn question.
Now can't you give me a straight answer anymore?
Why should we believe anything that this administration tells us about anything ever again?
I think we all recognize, and I think the Pentagon has been very, very honest with themselves about the challenge to credibility by what has transpired here, and by how
will you stop doing that?
How hard it was for them to be fully transparent with the American people. I think we all.
Let's get the answer straight here, because if John Kirby's not going to say it, I'm going to say it. The Pentagon was covering Lloyd Austin's ass. They didn't want word to get out about this for some reason or another. They didn't want to bring about any sort of panic. They didn't want to accept the accountability from the White House, maybe. They were covering their own asses. They didn't prioritize transparency and accountability. They prioritized their own skin. That's what happened here. And the question should be asked, who's going to be fired for having screwed up priorities in dealing with this situation? Is it going to be Lloyd Austin? Is it going to be anybody in the national defense apparatus other than the Deputy Secretary Hicks, Jake Sullivan? Someone. Who's it going to be? Who's going to be held accountable for this?
Recognize that, and wait, now just give me a second now. I know you got another one coming here, but we all recognize that this didn't unfold the way it should have on so many levels. Not just the notification process up the chain of command, but the transparency issue. We all recognize.
He is dancing up a storm. He's got the arm motions going on. He's trying to take accountability-ish. It's a tap dance, folks. Don't believe it. It's showmanship. It's kabuki theater, in my opinion. That's what you're seeing right now. Because at the end of the day, as we sit here right now, nobody's been fired. Nobody's been held accountable. No one has stepped up and said, I screwed up and I should be reprimanded for this. Nothing like that in our national defense apparatus, in the upper echelon of our national defense apparatus. It's shameful.
Recognize that, and I think we all want to make sure we learn from that. It's up to you and your colleagues, and it's up to the American people to determine how much they're going to ascribe what happened here to our credibility on every single issue. But in every way, Secretary Austin has been an exceptional defense secretary, and he still has the full faith and confidence of the commander-in-chief. He has led the department at an incredibly dangerous time for our national security interests and those of our allies and partners.
But if the administration is going to go to such great lengths to keep secrets about the defense secretary's health, how can anybody be certain that the administration would not go to the same lengths to keep secret problems with President Biden's health?
And actually, this is a legal concept as well. It's the idea, and I've talked about it on the show, called Falsus and Uno, Falsus and Omnibus. You lie to me once, I should assume that you're lying to me at all times. Once your credibility is shot, it takes a lot to regain my trust, at least. And as a voter, you should be looking at this the same way, I think. Can you trust the White House with our national security when you can't trust the White House to know where the Secretary of Defense is at a given time? Can you trust the Pentagon to not keep secrets from our government when they have been keeping secrets from our government on a little thing in the grand scheme of things, but significant in that it's the Secretary of Defense, and we don't know if he's been compromised. We don't know what his health situation was. There's a big can of worms that they opened up here that had they just been transparent, open, and honest, nobody would have been questioning it. In fact, I think people would have been understanding if the Pentagon would have came out and said, Secretary Austin has just been diagnosed with prostate cancer. He's going to be taking some time to deal with it. In the meantime, here's the delegation of authority. Here's the chain of command. This is how things are going to be handled. And that would instill confidence that the people know what's going on and that matters are well in hand.
Honesty is still the best policy.
If you could logically argue, and you can't, but if you could logically argue that the minute
He's 81 years old.
Wait a second. Just give me a second here, bub.
What did you just call me?
Okay, you don't have any room to be glib right now, John. I'm sorry. Give me a second here, bub, when we're talking about how can we trust you again? And you're saying, well, your question is wrong. Of course, Peter Ducey's question is on the money here. How are we supposed to instill trust that we're getting all the information from our national security if you're going to lie about this? And this was a pretty decent-sized lie. So calm down with the bubs, all right there, John?
I'll get there. If the administration made some sort of Machiavellian effort across the board to keep this from getting public, then I think your question has merit and certainly is a fair one. I don't think it's a fair one because that's not what happened here, Peter. What happened here is the Secretary of Defense, for whatever reason, I can't answer the question why, that information wasn't shared. It wasn't shared widely in the department, and it certainly wasn't shared with the interagency. It's not good.
So it's not a conspiracy. It's not Machiavellian. We're just stupid. We didn't have a grand plan to pull the wool over the eyes of Congress and the American people. We're just dumb. How is that helping, John? You're basically admitting that the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. Nobody's taking accountability for that. And all you're saying is, we made a mistake and we're going to learn from it, when it's something that basic people in their everyday lives know to do. Are you freaking kidding me here? This is supposed to instill confidence in our government, in our defense? This is completely ridiculous. John Kirby failed this assignment here. He is not doing his job in being contrite, in explaining what happened. He's not letting us know what's going to make this better. He's just opening it up for more questions, more concerns, and more importantly, more conspiracy theories that may crop up from the secrecy of all of this. People are going to ask, what else don't we know? Peter Ducey's right. How can we trust you to talk about the president's health if we can't talk about the defense secretary's health, and that's going to be kept secret from us? I get that there's no proof that they're doing that, but you've opened up Pandora's box to these questions, and it sucks. And I hope voters remember this for the 2024 election. This is definitely a new attack vector for opponents of the Biden administration. They don't know what's going on in their own administration, and they want you to give them another 4 years of non-accountability. It just doesn't work that way, folks. I hope you agree with me on that. But listen, that's my opinion on this whole thing. I want to know what you guys think about all this. What's the deal with the Pentagon not telling us what's going on with the Secretary of Defense? It's a big story to me that we should be talking about. Let me know in the comments what you think about this whole debacle. Are they Machiavellian? Are they stupid? Are they both? Is it something else that you have in mind that you want to call them? Feel free to use any expletive you want in the comments. We'll discuss it there. And please, as always, subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss shows. Like and share the video with your friends. All that good stuff. Let's get a whole bunch of us together. And let's talk about this buffoonery that happened this week in DUMBmocracy.
All views and opinions expressed here are not necessarily of the mainstream media and may offend some listeners. It's called political buffoonery.